Okay, today I am talking to John Buckman. John is the owner of an independent record label called Magnatune. And Magnatune has been in business for about 8 years. John works with a variety of independent artists. He licenses to film and television and also sells music via Magnatune. John, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
John, what I'd like to do is start by having you kind of fill us in on Magnatune, talk a little bit about the history of your company, how long you've been in business, what you've been up to, etc.
So Magnatune was created about 8 years ago, and the idea came because I had friends who were in musical genres that I found really interesting. For example, the early Warp Records, electronica, classical music, new age, even like late 1980s heavy metal. All those genres were pretty much gone in the sense that they weren't showing up anymore in record stores. They were old genres that, for whatever reason, people weren't interested in. And I was thinking, how can we have a business model that can keep these things alive? How can we keep music alive? And I thought that maybe what I could do is a business model that would largely lose money getting music in consumers' hands, but then make money licensing it to film and websites and that sort of thing. That was the original idea behind Magnatune. And then I would get submissions from independent artists and then pick the best thing. Now, what's actually turned out is we end up making money both on the licensing side and the consumer side. The consumer side has worked out a lot better than I expected. Every month I get about 300 to 400 musicians submitting to me, and I pick about 10 new musicians out of that I think are just mind-blowing. And the focus has not been on what is often called session music or production music. Instead, it's been on getting music that you'd actually want to listen to while having dinner, that you'd actually listen to as a foreground activity. Music that people live and breathe making it, not session music that's made on impulse. And as a result, the kind of licensing deals that we've done have been more things where the people buying it want that real vibe. They want something that's a funk R&B thing that's totally like that, or they want some completely insane electronica thing. And then probably the area we've been most successful for with in licensing has been independent film. We've done a lot of trade show booths at the film festivals, and over 8 years we've licensed to about 3,000 independent films.
Wow. I didn't realize you've done that many films.
The sad thing is the independent film business is even more cutthroat than the music business because there are a lot less movie theaters than there are home hi-fis. And of those 3,000 films, almost all of them have shown at film festivals, but we're talking at less than 50 have gotten picked up and gotten global distribution.
Wow. Let me ask you a question regarding licensing, John. So you've had music in close to 3,000 or 3,000 plus independent films. When someone chooses to do business with you and they pick a Magnatune artist, why are they choosing to do business with you and your artist as opposed to all of the other people vying for the same slot? Is it more to do with relationships that you've established? Is it purely the music, that you have music that just fits better than all of the different artists that supervisors are listening to? Can you speak to why certain songs get licensed as opposed to others?
From the very beginning, because we were going to these trade shows and speaking at panels, and we were really close to indie filmmakers, I got a really strong sense of what they were looking for. And here's a bunch of things. So first of all, the quality of the music has to be consistently high. Sure. Filmmakers don't have the time to go through a lot of stuff. But they seem to, especially indie makers, like to have control. They largely did not have music supervisors. The filmmakers themselves were picking the music, and it was really integral to the editing process. And they liked being able to, for example, listen to entire songs very quickly with a website, something that very few sites let you do. We really concentrate on having a consumer experience that was really good, to find albums that you might want to buy for $8 a piece. And the flip side of that is that the experience for finding music was really good on Magnatune, which then also made filmmakers' lives much easier, because just like a consumer looking for an $8 album to buy, a filmmaker was making lots of bouncing around, playing genres, moods, listening to whole songs. Often they would just play the music in the background while they worked on other things. That was that side. The other thing is that I was very closely aligned with Creative Commons, and I used to be on their board, and wanted to make things easy for filmmakers. And so what we did is we made all our music on Magnatune have a Creative Commons non-commercial license. That meant that the music could be used for free as long as the film was non-commercial, meaning they weren't collecting any money for showing the film. What that allowed filmmakers to do is to use our music for free while it was being edited and during test showings, as long as it wasn't no money was collected. We got into what's called temp track love, which is where a filmmaker throws a track in because it's free, and we'll get something real. We'll get that Joan Jett song or the Aphex Twin song or whatever later on. Now, what of course happens is the film gets cut to your music, and there's no way anything actually can replace it, because that they've always thought of that music when they were making that shot. And then later on, the licenses were a simple click-through. So if you are a filmmaker and you want a license from Magnatune, you pick the song, you say what your distribution is, and you give your credit card. There's no approval process. This was another big thing for filmmakers. They found that they would pick some music that they liked, and then they'd have to go through an approval process and submit a script to the label, so that the label would give approval, and then the actual musician often would give approval too. And the creative control aspect really bothered me. As a musician, I don't want anyone telling me how to write music, and as a filmmaker, I don't think any filmmaker wants to be told to recut their scene, or that isn't appropriate music for the positioning of the musician or any other stuff that they're thinking about. So it makes it really easy. And then finally, all the prices were right there. This is something we also heard from film licensing, from filmmakers, is these notorious step licenses where they'd get a price that was really fair for a festival, but they weren't quoted a price for when they got distribution. They would get distribution, and then, frankly, the label would then have the filmmaker over a barrel, be able to claim any price they wanted, because the distribution offer was contingent on getting the license for the music. And then you can ask for 10, 20, 30 grand because you know that the film has to have your music and you've got them. That bothered a lot of filmmakers. They wanted to know what the price was up front and that it was cleared should they get distribution. So I think those are all good reasons why we've done well in indie film.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you've streamlined the process of licensing music. You've made it very easy for filmmakers to find and license music. Can you talk about how the process works, John? Do they go directly to your site? Is there a section where supervisors log in? Do they call you and say, hey, I need a song that sounds like this? How does that work?
From the very beginning, iTunes was my model, was very self-serve. And so you go to Magnatune.com, you don't even need an account. Anyone who goes to it can listen to every song for free without logging in. You just have a voice at the end of each song with a little advertisement telling you what you heard and that you should be paying. So that means that anyone who doesn't like having to commit to a website to log in, get an email confirmation, all that stuff, you don't have to do that. You just go to Magnatune. You're confronted with a genre list of 10 genres. Let's say you're looking for, I don't know, some jazz thing. You hit jazz and blues. It immediately starts playing music based on popularity. You just click, click, select. Anytime you're interested on licensing, there's a license button next to every song. You hit license, and then it asks you, what are you going to use the music for? If you say, for example, I'm going to put it on my website, then you click website. It then asks you some basic questions about how is it going to be used? Is it all through the site or just on the opening credits? For how long? That sort of thing. And that gives you a price. And it's just a shopping cart. You buy it just as you would from Getty Images or iStock Photo or any of those photo licensing sites. So on the one hand, make the experience of finding music not require a login, very quick to listen to things, very high quality. entire songs, and then when they're ready to look at the price, give them a price, off on their credit card, check out, get the hell out of the way.
Gotcha. Now, I wanted to go back to something you mentioned a few minutes ago. You talked about the Creative Commons license. And how does that work for songwriters? How do they get paid when music is licensed under the Creative Commons license? How does that work, John?
So the Creative Commons has a whole bunch of different licenses, and you as the creator of the music can choose which one is appropriate for your work. The one we used specifically allows the music to be used for free in non-commercial settings. In any commercial setting, the Creative Commons license isn't valid at all. So if the music is used on a commercial website or if it's used on a film where tickets are sold, that license is completely void.
Oh, okay, I know.
So
okay, sure.
If you go to Creative Commons, you go to the Creative Commons link, it will say you may use our music in any setting that is non-commercial where no money is exchanged or where the goal of the organization is not primarily to make money. So a school, for example, can use it. But that license is completely invalid for any use where money changes hands. The basic idea is if you're licensing music, if the people using the music are making absolutely no money, well, then you're not going to make a sale. There's no money there.
Sure.
You'd rather have them use the music, and then when they get to a point where there is money, then they have to pay. Film is a great example because every film festival requires the book, the clearance book, for every film that's shown. So when film festivals charge for admission, so they're thoroughly commercial, and so the Creative Commons license doesn't apply, and at that point, the filmmaker has to pay for a license. So the Creative Commons license was really useful for us to get people using the music in the early stages when they're just thinking about it before any funding maybe has even been raised, or for a webmaster to organize it. The other thing is that we very quickly we allied ourselves with the filmmakers as creative people as well. And this was really key for Magnatune. My background is as a musician, and making some money in my 20s doing production music for television. So I was very aware of what it's like to create music. And then when the filmmakers talked to us as fellow creative people, we thought, how can we make them happy and not suddenly we're just trying to do a screw job on them. And the CC license really felt good to them. Like, this is not some evil company that's just going to turn around and kill us. They know we have no money now. They're working with us. When we get distribution, then they're going to get a couple $1,000s. That's fair.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense, and obviously that provides extra exposure to artists that wouldn't have it otherwise, right?
Yeah. For example, I always get her last numbers. Lonely Girl 13, I believe, is the number. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I got the number wrong. 15. Lonely Girl 15 was a huge internet phenomenon on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
And those were free videos, and they almost exclusively used Magnatune music.
Did they? Oh, cool.
Yeah. And at the end of every show, they would credit all the Magnatune music. And the really famous episode where I believe Breed dies is nothing but a music video. There's no speaking. It's just still shots while this one song from Magnatune plays. And it's really just heart-rending. And that did fantastically for us. And also, it just showed, look how cinematic this Magnatune music is and how emotional it is. They don't even need words.
Wow, that's like a free advertisement for your company and your artist. No, that's
totally,
awesome.
And it was millions of people, and they weren't making money. They were distributing the videos themselves under a CC license, Creative Commons license, so it was all on the up and up.
Gotcha. Next question for you, John. If you could talk a little bit about music licensing in terms of what artists can do. If anything, obviously they need to create great music and they need to produce great quality stuff. But what can artists do to be, proactively seeking licensing opportunities beyond just hooking up with a company like yours, getting placed in your catalog? Is it really sort of just a numbers game where you have to produce as much music as you possibly can and sort of wait for opportunities to line up? Is there anything that you can speak about in terms of what artists can do to proactively get licensing deals?
I think the answer to that depends on which strategy you're going to take, and there's three different ways I see license music happening. The first are these sort of royalty-free CDs or libraries where the music's quite cheap, and I think that's just a numbers game. And you get in there early. I don't have much experience with that, so I can't speak to that.
Sure.
The second is the exact opposite, which is where you have an agent who is representing you, and that, Pump Audio, while they're different now, they sold to Getty, was very much that sort of thing. A small number of artists, people calling them, pushing it. Of course, they pushed it through their pump box, but there's also lots of people in LA, in New York, in Chicago, and if you can get a good name agent who has a small roster to represent you, you can do quite well. I know a musician who I've been talking to who got $120,000 to do a song for a really big shopping store chain.
Wow.
And that's amazing.
Can you say that figure? $120,000.
They got $120,000 for that. Now half goes to the agent.
Can you say
but this agent?
Can you say who the shopping store?
I don't have his approval to say that, so
okay.
I'm not gonna.
Okay.
But I met him for coffee a couple days ago, and he told me, but unless he tells me I can say who his name is, I won't.
Sure.
But this agent was also representing some stuff from the 80s that was like top 10. Mm-hmm. Now this guy is unknown, but because the agent believed in him and his sound has got kind of a old-time roots rock sounds,
mm-hmm.
The person buying the song doesn't know he's not Bruce Springsteen. It sounds like something that could have been. Right. So that's really awesome. That's a fantastic way to go.
When you say agent, yep. Do you mean, is this a music publisher or is this literally an agent?
It's a licensing agent.
Okay.
I don't think music publishers are actually worth a whole lot.
Okay.
My experience with them is that they promise a whole lot. You give them an exclusive to either your existing catalog or your future catalog, and they might push it for 6 months to a year. If it doesn't go anywhere, they just sit on it, and then you get to give them half your wealth for the rest of your life. And that's not a great deal. I know of a few cases where that hasn't been the case, but by and large, publishers promise a lot, then they get the rights to your music, and then they expect you to work to get them a commission. I don't really like the deal.
Yeah, and they of course
agents
work with work with a lot of other artists than just you. So.
Now agents, are going to be a couple-year deal or just a deal. They get maybe half the publishing on the deals they do, which I think is totally cool. I'm really into revenue share. I think that's the way the world should align. You find somebody who only makes money when you make money, and if they take half your share, that's totally cool because for every dollar they make, $1 goes to you, and you want them motivated. Generally a deal where they're not making a whole lot of money from each licensing deal, because most of it goes to you. They're not going to work hard.
Sure.
They're just going to let it come.
And like I always say, half of something is better than nothing.
Yeah, so Magnatune's always been 50-50. We get $1, musician gets $1, and it's off the gross. That's just a really simple deal. You want us to make a lot of money whenever we make a big deal because you get a lot of money. And that's how it goes for any agent. So, a 3-year deal exclusive with an agent, that's fine. And you rev share it. But if someone wants your publishing for good, then you need an advance. Otherwise, you're getting ripped off because you're just handing over the rights to something that you worked hard to make, and they're not actually promising anything. So that's not any good. But I have seen plenty of agents who are decent people. Generally, they're from the industry. Generally, they already were in LA or New York or some other space where there was a lot of licensing going on. They have contacts, and they're getting calls from agencies saying, exactly, this is our use for this TV show. We want 3 samples, and they need to be pre-cleared at this price. That's that business. We've tried that business, but we're not insiders, and that's not what we're good at. What we're good at is this sort of third space that has grown up a bit in the last few years, which is where you have high-quality music, but not the really famous stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's more self-serve, and it's a lower cost. So that even when we get a really big deal, and we have gotten a lot of big deals, car manufacturers bundling our music with every car kind of thing. And those are good. It's still going to be 10 to 20 grand. It's not 120 grand. And that's because we're not Bruce Springsteen.
Well, that's still nothing to sneeze at, right? 10 to 20 grand. I think a lot of writers would be happy to come across those kinds of deals.
Yeah, but you got to have a lot of them because 10 grand is 5 grand for us, 5 grand for you. That's 2 months rent, and then you got to move on and find more money. So that's good stuff. But right now, Magnatune is largely one of the income sources for our musicians. There are only very few musicians who can make a living off Magnatune. But if we're giving them 5 to 20 grand a year, we're someone they like. But they find other places too in order to pay the rent every month.
Sure. How many artists do you have at Magnatune, John?
We got 300 artists.
Mm-hmm.
About a third of them are making in sort of 1 to 5 grand a year range, and only about 10 of them are in the close to making a living range.
Okay. So what do you think separates the 10 that are making good money from the rest of your writers? Is it the music? Is it luck?
There's a couple things. I mean, one is just the first song on their album has got to have an amazing hook, and it's got to have an amazing hook within 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
That's bottom line what it is. Because whoever is listening to the music to see if they like it, it's kind of 10 seconds. And they're only going to listen to the first thing you gave them of that artist, and they're moving on. That's just how it is. And very few artists are willing to face the fact that it's that harsh. So this guy, Aaron Starks on Magnatune, he's got something like 80 licenses. It's just insane. And if you go listen to his music, it's just type in Aaron, E-H-E-R-N, on Magnatune. You'll see why. Because immediately he's got a piano thing that repeats twice, and then the cello kicks in like maybe 10 seconds into it, and you're humming. You're like, this is really good. This is fantastic. I can memorize this. This is like the Peanuts theme. It's something that everyone will remember forever, having heard just 10 seconds of it. So it's got to be at that quality level. And too much stuff, I think, just gets dashed out. It's just, you work on it the weekends. It sounds really good. You're trying to have a kind of, classical war kind of big drum thing, and there's 1,000 pieces like that.
Sure.
So you got to have something that is memorable, like the famous scores that we grew up with. And I mentioned, that the Peanuts theme. If you've ever seen one of the Peanuts cartoons, it's George Winston who did the theme for that, and it's extremely memorable. It's one of the great themes. It's got to be that good.
Sure.
The other thing you asked earlier, is there anything musicians can do to get ahead of the game? The number one thing you can do is realize that just like you're a starving musician, there are starving creatives in other fields who have no money, who are just as talented as you are, and who are doing it for almost no money. You need to find them and work with them for free to get yourself started. You tie their fate to yours. So go to a film festival and find filmmakers and give them your card and say, I'll do your first score for free. Same thing for websites, for games. Yeah.
No, sorry to cut you off. I just read this exact piece of advice probably a week ago. No, I think that makes perfect sense. Align with...
That is the one thing.
Yep.
Yeah. What people think is that if only I could find one big deal, and then that would totally skyrocket me. But one big deal, the big companies largely are going to deal with agents who already have big-name artists. Big companies deal with big artists. That's how it works.
Yep.
Big-name companies don't go to an unknown person. An unknown person goes to an unknown person. You got to make it happen.
Yep. No, that makes perfect sense. John, can you talk a little bit about what we talked about before we started recording this interview, which is, in addition to licensing, how you make money at Magnatune through selling music? And you were saying you've gone to a membership route, right? Like a one price for unlimited downloads. Can you talk a little bit about that, why you've done that, and how that's working out for you?
Sure. For the first, 6 years of our business, we did just like iTunes. We sold albums at about $8 an album. And the difference with iTunes is the selection was smaller and hand-picked, and you got WAV files, which sound better and no DRM. But little by little, that business model is now, you can find that everywhere. And that really hasn't done well for us in the last 2-3 years. What did do well for us, we started 2 years ago, was an all-you-can-eat thing, where we asked people to pay $15 a month, minimum for 3 months, and they get complete access to catalog. Now, the reason that works well for us is because I think most people don't have time to shop, nor is shopping for music all that much more fun anymore. in this world of computers and iTunes where you can have massive collections, you get a 40 gig iPod, how are you going to buy one album at a time to build that? Well, no one does. Everyone just pirates music or gets music from their friends, or huge CD collections get ripped because you're not going to buy one album at a time from iTunes or Magnatune and fill up your iPod. What does seem to work, though, is asking people to pay monthly and have kind of a post-sales relationship with us, where now that they've paid us, you can have everything. We've got 10,000 songs. You can listen and download anything you want. What happens is they actually don't download that much because now they've got access to everything. They don't really relate to the catalog in the same way. If you think about what it takes to buy an album, when you're thinking of buying one, you listen to a bunch of things on, let's say, Amazon. You whittle it down to a half dozen things you're kind of interested in buying. Then you listen to those half dozen things. You decide to buy one or two. It's a lot of work.
Sure.
And you also now are the librarian, the archivist of that thing you bought. If instead you just pay to have unlimited access, then you don't have to worry about that. You've got all the music you want at all times. The other big thing it did for us is when we were selling albums, everything we did at Magnatune had to go through this decision of, will it help us sell more albums? So if we do an iPhone app, will we sell more albums? If we use a Creative Commons license, if we do an Android app, if we have more or less commercials, will it sell more albums? And there were a lot of things people asked us to do, or things they wanted to do with their music, with our music, that wouldn't sell more albums, so we didn't do it. When we went to full membership, the question then becomes, how do we either get people to join or not leave? But once they're paying, what can we do to make them happy? And so, for example, our iPhone app just allows people to stream every album for free with no commercials, unlimited. And that may seem, like a suicidal business model, but it turns out the bandwidth isn't that expensive to do that, and it makes people really happy. When I drive for an hour, I just stick my iPhone in the car, and I've got everything Magnatune has without ever having to sync or download, which is cool, and no one else offers that.
Cool. How do artists get paid under your business model? Is it based on how many times their music is downloaded, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's exactly how it works. It's still 50%. So if someone who pays $15 a month downloads 2 albums that month, right, $7.50 goes to Magnatune. $7.50 is then split between 2 musicians. They get $3.75 each. $3.75 each per download album, and that's really good.
Yeah,
that's way up there.
That's a good percentage.
That's pretty much what you got in the old CD days,
How are people finding you? How do listeners of music come across your site? How are you finding consumers?
Well, the nice thing about Magnatune is we just got lucky. When I launched 8 years ago, I had this slogan called "We are not evil."
Right.
And people really liked that. The press latched onto it, and for many years we were ranked in all the news stories. When Newsweek did a top 10 music sites on the internet, we were on that top 10, along with CD Baby, with the only independent site on that list. So we've got millions of blogs that link to us, and every day we get about 28,000 unique visitors coming to the site.
Wow.
So that's a lot of people coming to the site every day listening. The average stay is 3.5 hours. So people spend hours and hours and hours at our site listening to music, and that's how the audience gets built.
Oh, wow. So you built up some traction early on that you've maintained to this day.
And haven't screwed it up yet.
Wow. So what are your thoughts in terms of sort of where the music industry is headed? Do you think musicians should be focusing more on making money from downloads, licensing, playing shows? What is sort of your feel for the current state of the music industry?
Yeah, my feeling is that thanks to the internet and all these different ways of using music, there are more and more niches. So there is no silver bullet now. Where there are is tons of new opportunities. So you need to actually do all of them, but kind of hedge your bets. Don't spend too much time on one thing, because you have to see what works. And depending on your music genre, it may turn out that your MySpace page is the main way to go, because that gets a lot of fans and it gets you a lot of gigs, and that's how you're making money. Or it might be that you've got all your music is given away for free with a non-commercial license because you're trying to get licensing deals. And we've got musicians who do that. That's really popular, for example, with ambient music. A lot of ambient musicians do that because they don't think they're going to make any money selling their CD singly to consumers, but it's a quite popular genre with filmmakers. So do them all, and use Magnatune, use all the other licensing sites. If you don't know about musiclicensing.report.com, that's a good site where all the other music licensing companies are discussed by musicians, and whatever you think looks good, submit, as long as it's non-exclusive. Keep your rights. That's the big thing I say. Unless you're getting a nice fat advance, you keep your rights, boy.
And I assume you're non-exclusive with all the writers you work with, right, John?
Of course.
Of course. Mm-hmm. Do you is Magnatune more of a label? What do you consider yourself? A label, a licensing company, both?
At this point, I just think of us as a music service. We are a label in the sense that we're very picky. Mm-hmm. Only about 2 or 3% of what comes our way actually gets signed. And when you're signed to Magnatune, there's a lot of prestige with it. You immediately get blogged. Magazines will write about you. And a lot of the kind of effect that came with being a label, which is a stamp of approval and visibility, you also get with Magnatune in a way that you wouldn't with a licensing company because they're just doing licensing. The goal with Magnatune is everything, all the music goes through Magnatune, which is a consumer site, and then shows up on our other businesses as licensing, as background music, as music for your phone system, whatever. It all gets funneled through that way.
Gotcha. And if people are interested in learning more about Magnatune, where can they go? To your website?
Well, obviously, yeah, you go to Magnatune.com. If you click the About button, there's a For Musicians section, mm-hmm. and you can read about us. It's all in plain English, mm-hmm. and there's online submission, and we listen to everything that comes in.
Awesome. And my subscribers they can submit music. I assume you don't have a problem with that?
The only proviso is they've got to have at least 45 minutes worth of music in one genre. I don't sign pure production music. I don't sign stuff that's 1 minute. It's got to be music that you'd want to listen to while having dinner, and it's got to be a full album.
It's got to be great music and a full-length album. Well, listen, John, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. This is great information that you've shared. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. Thanks.